I'm William Kumwembe, and I welcome you to another edition of the program Business Time right here on Times Television. This is a magazine program in which we look at some of the major business stories happening in Malawi and beyond. Coming up in the program today, NBS Bank upbeat on 2019 business and industry seeks government support on exports. We have these and other stories. Stay tuned if you could. Hello and welcome. And in our main story today, Malawi Stock Exchange listed commercial bank NBS Bank has said it remains confident of improved business in 2019 despite anticipated interest income drop due to recent slash in policy rate by the Reserve Bank of Malawi. RBM has this year alone slashed the policy rate twice by a total of 250 basis points from 16% to 13.5%. We have the detail in this report.
Kumwenda said much as the reduction in interest rate may hurt the bank in one way or the other, the bank will still benefit because it will lend to more people, thereby boosting its interest income.
The interest rates in the banking industry have gone down significantly. That has caused the margins that we're making from lending. So as a bank, we are looking at that and see how best we can mitigate the losses that will come from the reduced margins, including increasing the volume of lending that we are doing. The good thing is that for us, we have a lot of room to increase lending. So that will help us to compensate for the reduced revenues from lending, from the interest margins. But not only that, you know, one of our focus area is retail banking, and there we would want to increase the services that we are offering to our customers. And like I said, we are working very hard on digital banking so that our customers can, for example, access their services from their phone and so on and so forth. Other initiatives we are doing is to come up with new products. For example, in the space of bank assurance, where we provide services in consultation or in conjunction with the insurance companies in the group. There's room there for us to increase the services we're giving to our clients by promoting them, by encouraging them to come in the space of bank assurance. So those are just some of the initiatives we are making, but it's indeed a matter that both management and the board are working on, because indeed we are aware, unless we generate alternative revenues, unless we increase the volumes of the business we are doing, it may not be easy. Consolation to us is that our balance sheet is growing, and as I said, our revenues are also growing. And we used, in the old days, we used to be among the top 3 banks in this country, and our strategy is that we really would want to get back to that position.
Looking into the future, Kumwenda says the future of the bank looks very bright. Reporting from Blantyre, this is Taonga Sabola.
Canadian dual-listed mining firm Mkango Resources Limited has started sending a consignment of 60 tons of rare earths samples for testing in Australia as part of the exploration process to complete its feasibility study. The firm is exploring the mineral at Songwe Hill in Palombi district. On Monday, the mining company started moving the rocks from Songwe to Blantyre, ready for ferrying to Australia via Nacala in Mozambique. Francis Namondwe filed this report. The test is an essential component of the exploration process in order to complete the bankable feasibility study, including the design of a processing plant for the Songwe Hill project. Mkango Resources Country Director Beton Kajinjika said the company was delighted to see the project progressing.
I'm extremely happy that at least we are now progressing forward to making sure that our project can go to fruition. When the samples are taken to Australia, they'll be put in a processing plant so that we can estimate recovery factors and and whether the mineral can be extracted very well. And it's to make sure that before we can spend money on putting up a factory, we should be 100% sure that we will get the mineral out of the rocks.
Palombe District Commissioner Memory Kaleso, newly elected Member of Parliament for Palombe North East constituency, Dennis Namachekecha, Director of Geological Survey, Chief Mining Engineer for the Mines Department in Blantyre, as well as civil society organizations representatives, witnessed the loading process. Kaleso says the district expects to reap the most from the project. She says Mkango had been transparent in the process.
So far, so good, because I think they've been transparent enough. We've worked with them from the beginning to this level. They've had a number of consultation meetings. We had a full council meeting, we had a DEG meeting, so we are aware of what is happening here. And I think even for today, we were told in advance that there's this important function. That's why we are here to witness. Of course, in Palombe, we are like now the eyes of even the central government, because we're here to represent the government. We haven't had any of such instances because they've been so transparent even to the communities. And I think they have also taken an initiative to support the communities in one way or the other, like drilling some boreholes, maybe taking the communities, come see what we are doing. So we've been moving together from the beginning to date. Yeah, from this initiative, we are expecting success, so that they go back with the back sample and come up with the higher levels of what they are looking for. Because with that, that's when we can start talking about development, so that for the people of Palombe, they should also benefit from this development, as the nation at large will also be benefiting, as they'll be making, or they will be paying the taxes and whatever they're supposed to pay.
Exploration works at Songwe Hill began in 2010, and the results of the back sample test will help complete the bankable feasibility study, which in turn will determine the future of the project. Acting Director of Geological Survey in the Ministry of Natural Resources, Energy and Mining, Kondwan Dombola, says the testing was critical in the exploration process.
This process is very important in the mining industry because it represents probably, would say, the last stages of exploration. What it means is once this type of a sample has been taken, it's where now companies would like to know how to get, in this case, rare earth oxide from the rock of this area. So it's a process where they would like to get out the rare earth oxide from the rock of this area. And then, because it's a process, it's sometimes becomes very complicated, but in this case, they would like to understand how to get that type of minerals out from that rock.
Over $30 million has been invested in the project since 2010. A report released by the African Institute for Corporate Citizenship has shown that Malawi's rice production has increased from 2,200 kilograms per hectare to 6,500 kilograms per hectare. More in this report.
According to the report, the development is as a result of systems of rice intensification, SRI, which is a set of simple ideas and principles that help produce more productive and robust plants. Through the program, farmers have been taught through demonstrations to field days to appreciate the principle that underpin the SRI as an innovation. AICC Project Manager for Market Access, Leonard Chimwaza, said there are good agriculture practices, line timely establishment of nursery, good water and nutrient management, and use of certified inputs.
Rice farmers are planting one rice plant at a station, per station. So with that, issues to do with nutrient utilization, sunlight utilization, water requirements and utilizations are always adhered to. So we have witnessed just in 3-5 years that the rice yield has improved from 2,200 kilograms per hectare up to around 6,000 to 6,500 per hectare. The reason being technology adoption, because we have inculcated the adoption of inculcated farmers that they should adopt the systems of rice intensification as a technology, and they have adopted it. 75% of the farmers in Malawi in the irrigation schemes, they are practicing this technology, and then the rice use has thrived. That's something that farmers need to do. So we can borrow a leaf from what the rice sector has achieved also to the other commodities.
National Rice Development Platform Chairperson David Boston Kamchaja attributed the development to collaboration between the private sector and the government in ensuring that the technologies have gone to the farmers and supported them throughout the production process. He emphasized the need to establish public-private partnerships to complement each other's efforts, considering that the number of extension workers trained in rice production is very few.
The public cannot do everything because they have got limitation, considering also that the extension workers are very limited. We have very little extension workers, especially those that are trained in rice production, and therefore private sector is very key. Now, the public sector are the ones that have got the research, like the food research, whatever. Their technology which they generate from there, it is not supposed to be on the shelf. It is supposed to be passed on to the private sector that are in rice production so that it can be disseminated to the farmers. And therefore, that partnership will be very key, and it must be encouraged that the government and private sector should work together in different sectors apart from the rice sector in order to increase production, productivity, quality control, and in all the value chains.
He added that the world will require additional 120 million tons of rice to feed the additional population, which is a huge market that Malawi can tap from. From Lilongwe, I am Chimwemwe Mangazi.
Remember, this is Business Time right here on Times Television, a magazine program where we bring you major business and economic news stories that are making headlines in the country and beyond. We'll be back in 60 seconds. And the Malawi Confederation of Chambers of Commerce and Industry, MCCCI, has demanded a serious government intervention in operations of the private sector if the country is to make strides in boosting exports. MCCCI Chief Executive Officer Chancellor Gafera Vanjira said this in Lilongwe on Tuesday on the sidelines of the annual export seminar organized by the Malawi Investment and Trade Center, MITC.
You recall that the few industries that we have, and even the crops that are grown now as export crops, were actually developed with a lot of government assistance. Yeah, when you are starting something new, when you want to move forward, you have to have government intervention. Government involvement, for example, you recall that even now the largest number of PhDs are in agriculture, and maybe they are in the sector of tobacco. That was done in order to develop the sector. That has not been done with the other sectors. You also know that the coffee was actually promoted by government. Even in tea, in the early stages, we had Matego. It was for a reason. Now, if you want to promote and diversify the agricultural exports, you have to make sure that there's government assistance. Government assistance in terms of technical assistance, financial assistance, even equipment where government can really say this is what we want to do. So this is the agricultural sector. Now the manufacturing sector is exactly the same. As I said, we have the industrial site in Lilongwe here. We have the industrial site in Blantyre, both of which were developed by government, and we had government investments in there in order to make sure that we have industry. So we had the national export strategy, yes, and now we wanted to have another one. But the fact that we just said the private sector is going to take up the opportunities and develop on their own, it doesn't work. The countries that you hear are developing these days, Ethiopia, for example, has a lot of government involvement. You heard the gentleman from Namingomba talking about how much importance the Chinese government is attaching to the production of macadamia and actually being involved in making sure that the sector succeeds. We need to do the same for the industrial sector and even for the agricultural sector if we want them to be exporting, because government assistance in the initial stages is extremely important. Otherwise, we will not get anywhere. Every country that has developed has had the involvement of private sector, of government in private sector activities in the initial stages. Government should not overstay in there, because we also have problems later where government maybe is actually putting its people, its own colonies, people who are close to it as the CEOs, if government overstays in companies. And I think we had that experience before. But the experience we have now is worse than what we had before, because we literally don't have any industry and we literally don't have any exports. As I said previously, our exports in 2012 were higher than our exports last year, and which means that as a country we're not making progress. Now, if the government is not seeing this and is not intervening, and yet it knows that the countries that are succeeding in exporting actually have government intervention, then we don't have a future if we don't have any government involvement. The private sector, for the few private sector companies that are exporting, for example, Ilovo, that are successful, yes, they're doing so, but you recall that Ilovo used to be owned by government before. So all I'm saying is, yes, private sector needs to be vibrant, but it needs, if we want more private sector to be promoted, to be exporting, you have to have a government push.
Now, Principal Secretary in the Ministry of Industry, Trade and Tourism, Ken Indala, said the country needs to diversify its export basket as one way of cushioning the economy against shocks affecting traditional exports such as tobacco, tea and sugar.
I have to say that we are faring well, but we are still having some trade balances, which I think to an extent is still gives us room for improvement. Yes, and I think this is why we as a ministry we still want to promote our exports, because we believe that the balance is there for us to export, and we are not actually meeting the balance itself. So I think that's it, the way how I can respond to this. I think the impediments basically, I would say, they are to do with quality, the products that we are producing, but also I think basically it's not valuing add to whatever we are exporting. We seem to be exporting raw materials, and I think as a government, as a ministry, this is why you see that we are talking much about value addition, because we believe that value addition is the only way that can actually help the country to be able to produce quality products and the products that are going to be accessed outside. And I think that's the biggest challenge that we do have. And
MITC Chief Executive Officer Clement Kumbemba said his organization would continue to organize such events where exporters can share knowledge on how to penetrate export markets.
It is important, I think, for Malay government through MITC. Once a year we bring all our exporters together because we believe they are very important in uplifting our economy. As you are aware that every country in the world depends on exports for job creation, for export diversification, for foreign exchange. And we feel that it is at a seminar like this one where they are able to learn from each other. They are in their own, as individuals experiencing some challenges. But it is when we bring them together that they are able to learn how their competitors, their friends are overcoming some of those challenges. But also, as you saw during the morning session, we brought in companies that are succeeding, that are doing very well in their export. So we would want them also to inspire those that may be having some challenges. So this is a very important seminar in as far as we're concerned, because they're able to learn from each other, but we're also here to capacitate them. You'll be seeing in the afternoon sessions that we brought in a number of service providers. You've seen the banks already. They're trying to spell out their products offering, which are available to companies that are producing and exporting. So yes, I think it is important, because as a country we depend on private sector. We want them to export more. As you know, all the government documents, the MGDS3, the National Export Strategy, is encouraging our exporters to value add and export secondary products and not raw or primary products, because that's where you get money. You saw that in the address by the PS. We are really urging our exporters that it's time that we embark on value addition and not to export raw products. But why they are not, it's a question that I think as MITC and various institutions of government and even private sector, NGOs, civil society, we need to team up and see how we can capacitate them. I'm happy to say that our ministry, through various agencies you've noted, has imported a lot of machinery in a number of manufacturing ventures, cooking oil, peanut butter, shoemaking. The aim is that we should not export raw. And I think a number of development partners, NGOs, they are helping our cooperatives, particularly cooperatives, because it's much easier if you want to attract subsidies. It's much easier if producers work in groups, and that's where they get machinery and the know-how to be able to add value. You saw that lady who's exporting raw precious stones. I think MITC will be working with her until we see her producing value-added cufflinks, earrings from our precious stones.
Now, in business news from elsewhere, President Donald Trump and outgoing Prime Minister of Britain, Theresa May, emphasized the promise of a trade agreement between the two countries during a joint press conference in London on Tuesday, even as Britain faces an uncertain future with its exit from the European Union later this year. The two leaders spoke to reporters as tens of thousands took to the streets to protest against Trump. We have the detail in this report.
Protesters flooded the streets of London on the second day of President Donald Trump's state visit to Britain with different messages for the U.S. leader.
Because of his climate change policies and the fact he's pulled out of the Paris Agreement.
Values like respect for other people, tolerance, non-discrimination.
My biggest problem with Trump is just the hate within him and the fact that he can bring that hatred out in other people.
Women's groups also demonstrated against what they view as the Trump administration's attacks on reproductive rights.
There seem to be fewer people compared to the more than 100,000 who protested Trump on his visit here last year. Organizers say that is because it's a weekday and blame the poor weather. Still, the commotion that they caused can be heard about a block away at the Foreign and Commonwealth Office, where Trump and May had their joint press conference.
Trump dismissed the protests as fake news and said he felt only tremendous love from the British people.
Even coming over today, there were thousands of people cheering. And then I heard that there were protests. I said, where are the protests? I don't see any protests.
Aside from that issue, Trump told reporters he is committed to what he called a phenomenal bilateral trade deal.
There is tremendous potential in that trade deal. I say probably 2 and even 3 times of what we're doing right now.
Prime Minister Theresa May, who steps down as the Conservative Party leader Friday over failure to reach an agreement on Brexit, also expressed support for a bilateral trade deal.
And it is this relationship that helps to ensure there are jobs that employ people here in the UK and in the United States, that underpins our prosperity and our future.
But analysts downplay the chances of reaching a trade deal anytime soon.
With Brexit still uncertain and the inability to determine what a future US-UK trade relationship will look like without the resolution to the question of whether the UK will remain in the customs union or the single market with the European Union.
Further wading into the Brexit controversy, Trump met with pro-Brexit leader Nigel Farage, a strong critic of May. On Wednesday, Trump will continue his trip with D-Day commemoration ceremonies in both Britain and France and a stop in Ireland. Patsy Widakuswara, VOA News, London.
Well, on that note, we've also come to the end of today's edition of the program Business Time, right here on Times Television, a magazine program where we bring you major business and economic news stories that are making headlines in the country and beyond. On behalf of the entire production team, my name is William Kumwembe. But always remember, if it doesn't make money, it doesn't make sense. Bye for now.